I don't think I'm going to record all of this because I don't want any recording.
I already started recording. When I send it to you, I assume that you're going to edit certain things out.
I might just leave it in there and how do we say, indict myself?
Yes, as one does. And then towards the twilight of their lives, they beg, please, brother, destroy my hard drives.
3, 2, 1.
Clear my search history.
Pew, pew.
Pew pew. Pew pew indeed. Indeed, my friend. Oh, I missed you. And I missed this conversation. Even though I've been listening to you as I've been editing, I miss like the new stuff. Like any new stuff that we can talk about is just so fantastic. It's so funny because Melissa, so we do this thing sometimes, especially when like cash is running low. Because we've got to drive like all the way out to Randburg to take Keanu to school. So we call it the Pursuit of Happiness Days. We're basically like, because petrol is crazy. So to like drive up and down every day, it'll cost us like $600 per day in order to do that. So, what I generally do is I drive in there and then I like work from wherever I can in Randburg. But this one day, we were literally like fun with Dick and Janing it, more so than we were pursuing her happiness. Where basically she had like packed us like a little picnic basket, and she had put like movies on our laptop. And I swear to God, Charles, we sat in the car and we had our own personal drive-in, and we watched Zach Braff's A Good Person with Florence Pugh, literally like in the parking lot of my son's school. And when the battery ran out, we were like, oh wait, let's find a library where we can go and charge the laptop.
I do that with coffee shops.
She had packed like snacks and like a flask of coffee. And I will say to you, man, it was a great experience. It was just one of those for the memory books where, like, we're watching Florence Pugh do her thing, and I'll never forget that movie because not only is it a fine movie, and I really enjoyed it, but just you often, much like we have stories of the games we play, we also have stories of the films that we watch. And that's just one for the memory books, man. I love it so much. And it's so funny because I think like, then we got paid and then we went to go watch Oppenheimer. So it was like a twofer, right? It was a twofer of Florence Pugh. Yeah.
That is wonderful. That is beautiful, actually. That is quite inspiring. You said stories of the films we watch as well, right? And you just triggered all these memories of... you're supposed to be in school, right? But you're not in school. Yes. Where are you? You're watching a movie in cinema. And for whatever reason, the usher or the ticket person, the guy who takes the ticket, what is that position called now?
I still like to call them usher because it makes me feel lofty. Let's go about usher.
Yeah, so the usher. And I'm obviously in civvies, wearing baggy shorts, but in my baggy shorts is a can of Coke on the left. Obviously, if you look, it's bulging out, right? Because you're not allowed to bring in food from outside the cinema, and you're not allowed to watch this R-rated film because of your age. But you have the ticket, and because you have the ticket, you are a patron and a very good sir. So said usher lets you in, and you just have the most marvelous experience ever.
Smuggling in snacks is one of my all-time favorite things to do. And you know that you're caught out once they hear the ruffling of packets in the cinema. And Melissa and I have smuggled in like full-on meals inside of a movie theater. It's like, sometimes I turn to her and I'm like, do you think they can smell the garlic from the shawarma? Like, do you think? She's like, she's like, just tear the wrapper. It's just, it's more quieter.
It's
I'm
more-
like, I can't.
It's more quiet.
Can an action scene? Yeah. Can an action scene please come up? Why are we watching this drama and eating shawarma right now? It's not right. And it's so funny. I remember there's this crazy story of the film that we watched because it was the year 1998, my friend, and Blade had just come out, and my elder brothers had watched it, and he was like, "Oh man, you should watch Blade." And the only time that I get to watch movies like that really is when they came on video, and I could kind of get into the cinemas.
Yeah.
But this time I begged my eldest brother. I was like, "Come on, man! Like, just take me with you. Take me with you to watch it." And my best friend was with me, and my second eldest brother was with us, and we were all underage. And he was like, "Sure, man. Okay, cool." So we went to Eastgate that I spoke about last time, and my brother bribes the usher, right? I shouldn't be saying this, but he did, right? So he said to the usher, "Listen, this is my brothers. Let them through. Blah 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 blah. They're coming to watch Blade." And the dude was like, "Fine, dude, you guys can come through." And we go, and my best friend goes to buy. Do you remember Pop Rocks?
Pop Rocks.
Yeah, you throw it underneath your tongue and it would pop.
The sweets.
These sweets.
Yeah, it's like little
sweets.
crystals. Yeah, I remember Pop Rocks. I remember.
Yeah. Fantastic. So he bought like Pop Rocks, and he bought like Sprite. And my second oldest brother was a huge fan of something called Zoet licorice, which is basically salted licorice.
What?
And it's disgusting, bro. It's exactly how it sounds. He's probably listening to this now going, "It's delicious, Willie." But he would torture us with it. He'd be like, "Come on, eat it." And you'd eat it, and you'd be like, "Why does my mouth taste like a golden shower? I don't like this." Especially if I'm not going to get a big Hollywood roll, I don't want this taste in my mouth.
I feel the same way about Marmite, but yeah, continue.
Yeah, Marmite and Bovril. It's just like things that should be out there. In fact, I sat with my son this morning and I was like, "Do you know there was something called fish paste? And they would make us eat it?" And he's like, "What is fish paste?" And I was like, "A good thing that you don't know what this is." Thank God peanut butter won the paste wars. You know what I'm saying? The great paste wars of the 1980s.
Oh my goodness.
But anyway, I digress.
Yes.
So he buys Pop Rocks, and my brother buys Zoet licorice. And I'm a standard fare type of guy, man. I like popcorn, no crazy seasoning on it. And back then, I don't even think crazy seasoning was an option. And I do my wine gums, and I do like a soda, right?
Okay. I have to ask, for future reference, in terms of seasoning, what do you prefer?
Just normal, plain old, like what when they dish it out of the popcorn bin and they give it to you, that's all I eat.
Okay, that's fair. All right.
Yeah, I feel like the other stuff is just like cancer-causing cocaine that people are just shoveling on their popcorn.
Okay, that's fair. All right.
And you can always tell because, like, my brother, my second eldest brother, is a person that just kind of like destroys his popcorn with that stuff, and he always like you can hear him coughing in the theater, and I'm like, yeah, there you go, you're getting black lung right now.
You savage. No. I'm gonna play devil's advocate, because I do put stuff on my popcorn. So that's just
okay. What do you put on?
It depends on the film. Funny enough, so if I feel like if I feel like it's like a film that I'm looking forward to, I go to like Memory Banks classic. I need to first flavors. Back in the day was like salt and vinegar, but now things have modernized and they've added different things. Because I never knew that you could have more than one flavor other than salt and vinegar. I was like, what? Butter is very good, and then there's this something in chives.
Sour cream and chives.
There we go. Yeah. But like you said, I laugh and I have to play advocate because I understand the coughing as well. It's like, why would you put too much of that in there? And there's this.
Yeah, and you get that like layer of cocaine at the bottom that everybody just kind of dips their finger into.
Yeah, I stopped just before the layer because I know it's almost finished. and this is also a funny thing.
That's what I imagine people are doing because I've never been there.
No.
But,
you seem to be very. Yeah. You seem to be like a paladin at this point in my mind. I'm like, how has he never done this?
I'm like an original recipe type of guy, like original recipe KFC. Like that's it. Like I'm not messing with dunk wings. I'm not messing with, zinger, any of that stuff. And it might be just that I have a weak stomach. But look, all credit to you, because look, Melissa is like the total opposite of me. She's literally having me smuggle in like spices. And in fact, Richard and I even did a skit on it called The Staff, because it's based on the fact that, like, if you go to like a new metro, Sterkenikoyo in South Africa, you obviously have to like negotiate for sachets. Now they don't have them in shakers anymore because people I think were just snorting it.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I'm full on like, yo, no, give me 2 extras. Do you have 2 extras just in case? Because there was one day the package didn't feel right, so I'm like, no, I want to put it on, but then I'm due for the movie. I need to be in the movie right now so I can watch the trailers and enjoy the popcorn while I'm watching the trailers. But then I'm like, where do I get flavor? But now the shakers are gone, and then you go back to the counter and they're like, it comes with the meal, etc., and my brain just couldn't compute. You kind of just delete whatever that the cashier was saying. And I was like, I just need another one. And then they pulled out a different flavor. And I was like, what's that? And I'm like, no, that's fine. Just as long as I have the flavor that I want, I'll try the other flavor as well. I didn't put the other flavor in, but I was just like, no, there's no ways I'm not going to have flavor. I remember a screening that we went to, and it was a private screening, and the chef who had prepared the lunch spread was serving the popcorn, and I asked him where the flavors was, and the disgust in his face when I asked him this, because obviously he was there on contract and he wasn't running the actual spot. He's like, we don't have that here, whatever the case is. And I remember just going, like, how dare he, right? This is cinema. How do you not have these things here, right? But it was a screening, and you quickly piece together that, no, he was part of the catering, and, he was manning the stall. And it was just this idea of, like, man, this thing is important, right? Just in terms of the pre-cinema ritual, where it's like,
of course,
well, whatever it is you like, it's it's part of the ritual. It's like,
Exactly. There are some cinematic laws that you must abide by. First of which is you must arrive 30 minutes before the movie shows, which gives you ample time to stand in line for 15 minutes, only 15 minutes. If the line is longer than the 15-minute mark, you do not go in, you do not get popcorn, you do not pass go, you go straight to jail. Like, that's the way it goes. And if you get there and it's 1:45 whenever the movie starts, no, you are not getting popcorn. It's just not the way that it works.
Yeah.
And if you are in the line and the movie has started, you have to abandon the line. Otherwise, face the consequences of wondering what exactly you're missing in the movie.
Oh man!
And you're not allowed to ask anybody to explain it to you.
And this is a good one, because in my mind, what happened was, all right. So before I discovered these laws in terms of movie lines, right, something magical happened where you go to a cinema, right, early in the morning. So just before that fence opens, right? Remember they've got like that metal fence, like that garage door, right? And they open it like
the anti-zombie deterrent, basically.
Yes. And they open it like maybe 30-60 centimeters above to let people know that the employees are inside, but the cinema hasn't opened yet, right? So you're like, okay, I'm super early, right? And then 9 o'clock hits, and then somebody comes and they rig the door back open, right? You can hear that, right? And it's open. It's like, okay, cool. The cinema is open, but now you're tentative because it's like, is the cinema really open? Can I come in? And then you come in and you're like, okay, I'm here to watch a movie, but the films are only going to start around, 9:30, 10, but you're there for the 9 o'clock show. So you're kind of understanding, human behavioral psychology now at a very young age, and you're like, hey, okay, I see you guys just got here. Most people aren't in the cinema at this time. And it's like, great, cool, whatever. Then you get your ticket, and then you enter the cinema, and the cinema is empty. I mean, just quiet. It's just you and maybe some other, spiritual being that decides to watch movies by themselves as well, and hops in at some point in the film. But it's just one of those magical experiences where you're like,
100%. It's just you in that Virgin Theatre.
Yeah, and then I got spoiled by that because I was like,
Yeah, it's great.
It's like, wow. So then you go to the cinema on like a popular day, right? Friday, Saturday, Sunday, from 5 to like 10, and you're like, what is this hooliganism? What are these strangers doing in my lake house? And
what are you doing in my cathedral? You heathens.
And like in the back of your mind, you're like, okay, I get it. Yes, it's Friday. People come to the cinema on Fridays, whatever the case is. And then you look at that line, and those codes really just kick in. Those rules where you're just like, no. How did we not get here earlier? How did we not actually watch this film on a day where it's super quiet? That's not the point. The point is now you have this knowledge in you, right? And it applies to the rest of your life. It's like, you want to get to the cinema with your snacks, smuggled in safely, with your popcorn, nice and warm, and then the trailers begin. And then you see how long it takes you before you're like, wait, I'm eating too much popcorn, the film hasn't even started yet.
Yeah. The other law is that if you have consumed a third of your popcorn and you're still in the trailers, you have to stop and put your popcorn on the seat beside you. Just to make sure, just to make sure that you save enough popcorn, and then diligently measure yourself as you're getting through each act of the film. Or is that just me? That's just me. But here's a funny thing, though. Speaking about snacks, I remember never feeling such a culture shock when somebody at work said to me, "You know what I do? I either buy like a box of Astros," and I'm like, "Yeah, they sell Astros," and she's like, "Or I buy like a box of Smarties," and I'm like, "Oh, where's this going?" And she's like, "And then I throw it inside my popcorn." And I looked at her like Eddie Griffin from Undercover Brother, where she was, as if she was talking about mayonnaise. I was just like, and I swear, Charles, there's not a moment that goes by that every single time I go to the cinema, it's tempting. It's like the devil is behind the counter, just like, "Would you like some Smarties or some Astros?" And I'm like, I'm not going to put them inside. I'm not going to mix them up. That's the devil's popcorn.
Oh my goodness.
And this person was so adamant. It's like, "Oh, you eat salty, then that's a little bit of sweetness." And that, I was like, that is like the white she-devil. That is Denise Richards of popcorn.
Oh man.
You just don't mess with it. You just don't mess with it.
This is so
hilarious.
hilarious.
It's like that one thumbnail on Netflix for Too Hot to Handle. You know the one, the girl in the blue bikini, you skip over it as quickly as possible. You're just like, astaghfirullah, and you just keep going down. Just me? Okay.
No. This is amazing because to stick within the theme and what we're actually going to talk about just in terms of films. There's a writing teacher that his favorite thing is to watch how people eat because it informs his characters. Because he's like, people eat differently, and if you pay close attention, you'll see how they eat differently, right? And then he starts describing a character. Let's say he's thinking about what he's writing about, right? And he's like, some people, right? They separate the yolk from the egg after the egg is fried. Some people don't even ask for the white around the egg. And already I'm like, what do you mean? It's an egg. It's fried. It's supposed to be white and yellow. I don't understand. And he goes into these other things, and then your brain is just like, wow, that's something I never even considered. Because to go back to the Astro lady, like I enjoy Astros. Like it's like one of my snacks as well. It's either Astros, Whispers, and wine gums, as you mentioned.
Whispers are my jam.
And jelly tots.
Whispers,
Oh my goodness. Oh
goodness.
me and the dentist.
Gosh, if any of these brands are listening,
No,
just
no.
just send us.
Leave
gift
them.
baskets,
They
That's all.
can never know how much we love.
But just on that note, though, if you still want the popcorn shakers, right? Movies at still do the popcorn shakers, and that's one of the reasons that we still go there. So the movies at that you find at like Gold Reef City or like Monte Casino. In fact, Monte Casino, I really have to give a special shout out to those staff members. They are still very much like ushers. They still care about the movie going experience.
Okay,
Which I really like. They're the people that like can tell you about movies. You can tell they greet you with a friendly face. They don't hate their jobs or hate their lives. It's just like it's an absolute joy to go there, and I frequent there quite a bit when I go and watch movies. Yeah, but that being said, I interrupted you there because you were talking about something really fascinating about how people eat differently and how it informs their character, and also at the same time, it's just like. That particular lady, in terms of like mixing those astros, like I get it, man. Like everybody has their own movie-going culture, which I find fascinating, man. Like I like doing that people watching a lot of the times. It's the only thing that annoys me is when people think that movie theaters are their lounges. Where they think that they can be on their phones or they can talk very loudly or they can show up late. And my worst pet peeve as of late is when people believe that they can find their seats once the movie's already started using the flash on their phone. It's like, be like the rest of us and evolve to a higher creature that can see in the dark. Like that. That's what is required. Or wait for a beach scene, as Dane Cook says. Just wait for the beach scene to come, and then you can find your seat. Stand at the door. Don't use your flash. It's not necessary.
Even your phone. Like I'm always like so when my phone vibrates in my pocket, right? Yeah. Depending on the movie that I'm watching, right? I either like do I check it? Because even when I check it, I feel like I'm probably just gonna go up until the door, so I can. Check it, whatever the case is, but I don't want to disturb people as I'm part of the side. That's beyond the point. What I really want to say is that I wrote like a little revenge story because of somebody who answered their phone during Infinity War.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
So it was I assume the father and his son. But they were sitting not next to each other, so that the father was sitting in front of me, and then the son was sitting in front of him. Like, I don't understand how they picked those seats. That was so fascinating to me.
It's like the Dutch rudder of picking seats.
Yeah, I was like, it's like, oh, wait, people don't sit next to each other? Maybe
you couldn't turn left. Maybe it was Derek Zoolander.
Yeah.
Maybe you couldn't turn right either.
Yeah, so whatever the case is. So then this bruv, he decides to... you can tell the phone is ringing, and then the phone rings, and this is Infinity War, and you're just like, what the fuck are you doing, right? Right? And he answers, right? And obviously now the other cinema watchers, you kind of feel like, when you say something, and the second you say it, it feels like the room went quiet and just heard what you said. Yeah. It felt like that, right? Where he answered his phone, right, and he's talking, and the kid, right, his son, turns around and yells at his dad. He's like, "Hey, don't do that! Turn the phone off!" Right? And I was like, "My man, you want to stand and clap for the kid, but you also want to, like, because in my mind, and when I wrote the story in my mind as well, like I wrote like a note, just in terms of like." This would make an interesting story where at the end of the cinema where everybody's coming out, right? Ushers and some of the patrons basically, they're like, they're looking at him, they're giving him the sour looks. They're like, yeah, there's that guy, whatever the case is. And the character who's supposed to represent what I was feeling goes up to this guy, right? And the phone rings and the guy pulls out his phone, right? And you just grab that phone and then you walk over and you find a balcony. And you throw it down the balcony with as much might as you can, right? So you can hear that phone explode when it hits the floor. Because that's what wow. Unbelievable stuff, man.
Amazing. I love it. It's so funny, man. Like, I love these stories. You know, there's a great one where, so I've done the thing where I've literally just screamed at the top of my lungs, like, shut the F up. Like, you know, particularly most recently was when I went to go watch The Batman. Matt Reeves, Robert Pattinson, and these yuppie kids were just like making a noise and walking through the aisles with their phones and it going in and out of the door all throughout the trailers, right? Because it's like, you know, I'm just going to the kitchen quick, I'm just going to the bathroom quick, like they were at home. And I had taken my wife out, her sister, and her husband, right? So our brother-in-law.
Yeah.
So they were like going off of their heads, dude. And, you know, my wife kept saying, like, these kids are driving me nuts. And I know her, she's a gangster, man. And I'll tell you why she's a gangster in just a bit. But at some point, I just reached her. And I'm a pretty reserved type of person, but I just screamed at the top of my lungs. I was just like, shut the fuck up. And the whole cinema went quiet. And I think that I felt conscious of the fact that I might have made it more tense for the people I was with, having done that, because they didn't really see me that way. I don't, you know, I'm not a person who's, you know, used profanity, I'm not a person that shouts. But it's just like respect the sanctity of the space. Like you said, you know, for me, cinemas have the same sort of feelings like cathedrals, especially when you go for those early morning shows. And it's as you say, you know what it feels like a lot to me, because you actually just, you know, sort of illustrated this image in my mind. City of Angels with Nicolas Cage, where they go on the beach when the sun rises. Like, that's what it feels like when you go to the movies.
Man,
for the first show.
It's
just that there's a beauty to it, and then you intercut that with Tom Cruise's Lestat from Interview the Vampire, watching Superman, you know, with the sun rising. You know, like that's the magic. There's like an intangible thing that I love about it, and I think that it has to be respected, because you said this 2 episodes ago, where you were saying that, you know, when you go to the cinema, because you're having this collective experience, it's like your IQ goes up 25 points.
Yeah.
You know, and I truly believe that. I think that you're having a very Jungian experience, like a collective unconscious experience.
Yeah.
And I think it's a beautiful thing, man. And you feel it in churches, you feel it in mosques, you feel it in synagogues, you know. You feel that thing. There's a great YouTube video by like the Stories of Old, where he talks about this idea of sort of religious silence, even in cinema, but also at the same time in places of worship. Because I think the bricks themselves absorb all of that joy that's there. And there's a psychic experience there, just to sound a little bit woo-hoo, but
it's not even woo-hoo. I like that you said that, because it's like intrinsic joy, right? Some things you enjoy because you enjoy them. Like, there's no other reason outside of you other than the fact that you experience joy from that experience, that thing, right? So you mentioned like this cathedral thing, and I go back to the first time I ever experienced cinema, right? So Papa drops us off, myself, my elder brother, and my cousin. And this was, what, 19-something East Rand Mall, right? I think this is my earliest memory. Well, it's just like, what is going on?
That's a big mall, man.
Right?
That's a big mall.
So we get to the mall, get out the car. I have no idea what's going on. I'm just there along for the ride. I'm the youngest. I'm just, whatever, you know, whatever excites me, you know, cool. And then there's this room, right? Lights, whatever the case is. I'm still not paying attention. Whatever's happening is happening. And then we get, you know, ushered into this little room. Right, I see the door, and then you go into the door, and there's this little corridor, but the corridor's kind of dark, you know, a little bit of lights, blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, you gotta check the steps, and then you get to your row, and then Papa's checking the rows. This is in hindsight now. I can see him checking the rows to see that the tickets are correct. And then we get seated, right? Now we're sitting down. But now the room is dark, and I'm the youngest. I'm like, yo, hey, hey, what's going on here? Older brother, cousin, somebody. But I'm not saying anything. This is happening in my mind. Right? What's going on? What's going on? Right? Where's Papa? Papa just left. Where's Papa? Right? You know when you're young, your parents go somewhere and they leave you somewhere. You're like, hey. No words of nothing, just cool. Right?
Yeah.
And then Papa comes back. I don't know how long it was, but this is how I remember it. So he comes back, and he comes back with like trays. And it's those little snack trays that kids get, right? The popcorn, the cool drink, and the sweets. And obviously I'm a kid, so it's kind of like, you say you're speaking my language, everything is fine now, I've got sweets. All right?
I still get giddy when I see those trays.
And cool. And then Papa goes off again. And it's like, okay, what is going on? Let me just keep quiet. Let me focus. I feel like I'm safe because I got my cousins. And I got my cousin and my brother. Right? And then obviously the noise and that big screen lights up, and at which point you're just like, what is going on? You're quiet, right? And you continue, and you watch a film, and the film was both beautiful and terrifying, and you're just like, cool. And then you come out of the cinema, and there's Papa, and just like, oh, Papa. And you're in such a good mood. I can't explain even why I'm still in such a good mood, but you're just like, cool. All right, this is part of the first experience.
Something has changed within you.
Yes. And now maybe 20-something years later, all right, where I still walk into the cinema, right? And I'd walk up just before you get to the seats, where you look at the little LED light stand with the seats on it, where you can still check on your ticket using the light from the LED, like where's my seat, blah blah blah. It's still one of the most wonderful feelings that I've ever experienced. I know it's weird, but it's just like I really enjoy that. Just that corridor. Like I've got like Pinterest photos of like if I have a home cinema, I want like a little mini corridor just so that I can have that.
Yeah, it's got that like the only way I think that it feels similar is when you're walking in the corridor that gets onto a plane. That's the only time I have a very similar, not exact, but it feels like I'm going somewhere.
Yes.
It's that like that glee. There's a glee there.
Yeah, I like that
There's
word.
an excitement there. And I really love that. And it's so funny, man, just to circle back to the glee that I had passing that usher to get into Blade. I was so excited, man. And a quick aside, real quick. The reason why Melissa's such a gangster is we went to go watch a movie probably about within the last year, and we went during school holidays, and these kids probably were like 10 or 12, and they were like all excited, and they were in their spaces, and they were like calling to their friends at the back, and I was observing it, and I was like, look at them having fun, because you just reminded me of this. And Melissa was like, yeah, they can have their fun now, but as soon as the lights go down, they better shut the fuck up. And I was just like, whoa. And I was like, she was like, it's all cute now, but like they need to recognize there's respect in this space. So the lights go down, and I fear for these kids' lives, man, because they're still talking, and it's the advert, so they're fine. And I'm just like, guys, just please, there's gonna be a red wedding in this cinema if you don't keep quiet. And they're like, hey, James, and they're like calling like 5 rows up. And as this kid does this, right, Melissa goes off, and she does it in the most Melissa way. She's like, hey, James' friend. You're so happy to be here. I know. Ooh, it's school holidays. Yay! But guess what? You're not in the cinema alone. So shut up. And they look at this guy. This poor kid looks at it and goes, I'm so sorry, ma'am. And then like sits down, and then like the entire row, like not in unison, but in sequence, like they all apologize one by one as if they're in a classroom. And I look at this and I'm just like, you're a gangster. And then literally one of them decides to make a noise and the rest of them are just like, shush, shush, shush. I'm just like, my goodness.
They're going to remember that forever.
Forever. And I was just like, they're gonna, dude, you're the person that just like, jump down their throats. But at the same time, thank you, because it was a great movie experience.
No, respect. Sorry to interrupt.
Here's the thing, because we also come from a generation that you couldn't speak in the cinema. Like, from our generation, like being millennials, like it was like a sin to speak in the cinema, let alone like phones, let alone anything else. Because remember, we come from an era that freaking usher would come there with a flashlight and shine it at you and be like, hey, you in the seat.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
Take you outside of the theater and give you a talking to. Or you throw you out of the cinema. Like, I was close to being thrown out of cinema because I went with the same best friend of mine to go watch Gone in 60 Seconds. And we were much older than when we went to go watch Blade. And he was, I think, on some sort of crazy medication, man. And for some reason, he could not stop speaking to the screen. And he started throwing popcorn into like ladies' hair, and I'm like, dude, stop doing this. And I remember the trailer for Joan of Arc came on. I'll never forget this. It came on, and he was just like, he was speaking back to Mila Jovovich on the screen. They were like, in every film trailer, they're like, who are you? And he's like, my name's Jonathan. And I was like, what the fuck are you doing? And literally one of those ushers came, shined the light in our eyes, and was just like, do you guys want to just step out real quick? And like, we had to go step out, and I had to apologize for him and everything like that. And then we went back in, and then he was quiet. But this same friend, man, when we were younger, we were going to watch Blade, snuggling in snacks, Pop Rocks and Sprite, right? And we obviously open up those cans really quiet, just like, so that no one knows what we're doing. And obviously the trailers come out, and we're like, we're watching Blade, it's so amazing. It's like an R-rated film, and I think it was one of my first experiences in my sort of adolescence with R-rated films. I'd watched Terminator, I'd watched Aliens, but I didn't watch like a 90s sort of early, sort of edging 2000s R-rated film, because those are slightly different, right? Those are like more Fight Club-ish, those type of films, like
Fight Club-ish, yeah.
Bleak, very. Yeah. So anyway, the thing opens, and obviously Blade has like one of the all-time best openings. I watch it from time to time, and I just still feel this level of excitement. And they go through kind of the back of the sort of club, and then you see them like dragging like these butchered bodies, and Tracy Lords is like leading this dude through like the back of this club, and you see these two bouncers, and you hear that Blade soundtrack, that like undeniable, so recognizable freaking techno tune, and it's muffled until they open the doors. And then I'm a stickler for club scenes in movies. Charles. I think that they get them so wrong. There's two for me that are absolutely phenomenal, Blade being the first, Miami Vice being the second.
Miami Vice, interesting.
The Dark Knight does it. Yeah, The Dark Knight really does it well, but it's very short. But the opening time, Miami Vice, is probably the most realistic sort of club sequence I've seen. Because oftentimes, us being filmmakers, what a film set's like. When you're doing a club scene, there's no music. People are just dancing to music that's going to come in later, and oftentimes the dancers look out of sequence. The sound's not right because people don't speak like that in clubs. People are not, they're not projecting their voice enough. These types of things always irk me when I watch club scenes, because I'm like, they're not really in a club. They're in a soundstage somewhere.
Okay, anyway, in a club. You say Dark Knight Rises, or which scene?
Dark Knight.
Dark Knight, okay, all right.
Yeah, it's when Batman goes to get Sal Maroni.
Remember,
all right. He fights him on like a catwalk. He fights his henchman on a catwalk.
Yep.
And the lights are kind of going, and he's just kind of sitting there.
And nobody can
being Eric Roberts.
Nobody's paying attention because, we're in a club, but and it kind of fits in really, really nicely because he's dressed in a Batman suit, so it's kind of like, there's a crazy here.
They probably just think he's a gimp, like an X-Men gimp. But anyway,
camouflage.
So, Absolutely. So I like that. I like it when they get I like authenticity. I'm not saying that I'm like a sucker for realism, because I think that films dabble in too much realism sometimes, because they should be movies. But that's a podcast for a different time. But anyway, so that Blade Club sequence is so great, man, because it has so much texture, and Stephen Norrington, the director of it, is criminally underutilized today after he did League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Apologies. I don't think that he should have been in director's jail for that film, and he should be making much more films than he is. But that particular scene for me sets the tone of that film so well, and I don't think a lot of films have ever done that in that degree. But anyway, here's little old Ali sitting on the edge of his chair, and I am in heaven. This is everything that I wanted. And then my friend next to me tries to shuffle past me, and I'm like, what's happening? And I see him literally holding his mouth, because obviously, as you know, in that sequence, instead of having a foam party, they have a blood party. In fact, it's called the blood bath.
Yes.
And the blood starts coming down, and my friend starts getting a bit queasy because of the pop rocks and all the Sprite and all the blood that's on screen. But me being the demented young kid that literally watched Aliens way too young and watched Predator when I was 5 years old, I am in cinematic heaven. I'm just yes, more. Give me more. And my friend goes by, and he goes for the bathroom. And you know what the first thing that goes through my mind, Charles? I'm not concerned about his health. I'm just like he broke a cardinal cinema sin. He didn't stick to the original recipe. And that's what happens. You're going to miss part of the movie, which I'm going to have to explain to you later. And it's and I mean, that scene is so great, in terms of Wesley Snipes arriving, and the fight scene is just, it's chef's kiss. I'm actually getting quite fatigued with fight scenes these days, simply because they all look very same.
Yeah, it's very same.
Especially
and it's very, it's a formula, right?
Yes.
At some point, knowledge, it transcends how it actually came about, right? So when you look at action scenes, and you look at how action scenes now are prepared, yes, they're prepared in the same way, and a lot of people have the same knowledge or access to the same knowledge in terms of preparing an action scene. However, right, your job as a filmmaker, or whatever the case is, I kind of got this thought from the Last of Us documentary that you shared with me recently, where it's you're going to deliver a new experience. You have to stay ahead of the audience, right? And with action scenes, it's so funny, because from the start of an action scene or its action sequence, your brain already goes, depending on how many films you've watched and how much you love it, in my opinion, your brain already just kind of starts warming up that barometer of I don't know. Where's this going? Where's this going? And I just want to quickly circle back to the club scenes, because you mentioned action, and I was when you said action films, and you mentioned The Dark Knight, and you mentioned Blade, I also just went why didn't you mention John Wick? And I was because then you've got John Wick and their approach to action sequences, as well as they also respect to cinema in general, because John Wick was not essentially supposed to be the blockbuster hit that it was. It had no right to do that, which sometimes turns out into one of the best experiences in film franchises that one could experience. And I'm just man, this is so synchronistic of just how cinema and storytelling, it changes you, and it changes it changes you specifically, and because you've changed, then everything else that you look at changes, and it's just kind of just this very wonderful thing. Just to interrupt.
No, it's a beautiful thing because, and we really have to give Keanu Reeves so much kudos, because if you look at it in terms of those markers, because action cinema changes with The Matrix, which is literally a year later off the blade. Like,
yes.
That is a marker up to.
Yeah.
Because for about, what is it, like 20 years, action cinema really was defined by the crew from 8711. And it's even now, sort of when John Wick comes out, that changes cinema again, action cinema again, because then everything starts to look like John Wick. That's where one of my gripes is, because I like my John Wick flavor in John Wick. So when I start seeing this other sort of like similar types of stuff in other films, like even the way certain people hold guns these days, because for instance, the Keanu Reeves John Wick way of holding a gun is very synchronistic, and it's something that he came up with. The way he holds that gun, it was a character choice.
Interesting.
Right, even though he was trained by Taron Tactical, right, who like trains a lot of the Hollywood stars these days.
Yeah.
The way he holds the gun, and even the reload where he throws the mag out, it's a creative liberty that he took. It's not realistic, and this is my kind of gripe, right? Is that it's not realistic, yet everybody who copies that now thinks that that's technique. In fact, funny enough, him throwing the mag out is actually been discovered to be one of the quickest ways to mag release, even in competition shooting. So funny enough, this is kind of like art imitating, life imitating art, more so than like technicalities being informed into cinema. It's more the cinema influencing people on the ground. So when people do 3-gun or whatever the case is, they actually kind of do the Keanu Reeves reload thing. But particularly the way he holds the gun is very John Wickian, if I can call it that. And when I see it done in other movies, I'm like, make your own choice. Because all I can see is a kind of watered down Keanu Reeves.
You know what's funny?
Go for it.
Yeah, no, because you're actually spot on about life imitating art, and I was just like, wait a minute, I have a John Wick story here. But what was it, right? Because I think to myself, and with John Wick specifically, because I was so blown away by John Wick in general, right? I'm like a big trailer fan in terms of the gaming space. It's my hype train ritual for games. So if a game that I'm looking forward to is about to come out and they release a trailer, I'm like, let me get that trailer saved. Save that trailer. And then until the game comes out, I've got those trailers. And then once I have all the trailers, and it's like the last 3 to 2 months before the game release, I'll have that on a playlist and I'll watch them repeatedly, early in the morning and then before I go to sleep, because I'm like, remember, you've got something to look forward to, right? So then I discovered John Wick from a trailer, right? And it wasn't, I can't even remember where I was watching it. But the trailer, I know for a fact it was not in cinema, right? So I watched the trailer, it was not in cinema. And then a DVD bin. This is wild, right? Because I got the John Wick DVD.
Yes.
Right? And I'm like, oh, I saw the trailer for this. And it was in a DVD bin. So I'm like, oh, it's a film that I'm interested in, that I haven't seen yet. Let me purchase this for myself. And I purchased it, and I get back to the house, and it's one of those things when you come home with plastic bags, the family members gonna be like, yo, what you got, right? I'm like, yeah. I just got this DVD and some other stuff, snacks, and I think something else, games. I don't know. Point is, John Wick. I'm like, oh, so now we have to watch this movie. They've put me on the spot. So we watched John Wick. And obviously John Wick is what John Wick is, right? Turns out, John Wick was not in cinemas in South Africa at the time. And it was
fascinating.
It was a few months later, after the hype train really took off and just went, whoa, and not even a few months, I think it was a year, where now John Wick is in cinema. And I'm just like, hey, why is this in cinema? this is an old film, but it's not. It's one of those weird, how did this happen sort of things. And then, looking back now, hindsight, 2020 vision, you kind of like, now this thing was destined to be quite successful. And you've got Keanu Reeves, and you mentioned the tactical training, because if you pay attention to like the behind the scenes, and if you look forward to seeing how these guys put this together, it's very reminiscent of Keanu and his experience in The Matrix, where they train ahead of time. So he put in months, not even hours, of work so that he could get that gun fu right. And they call it gun fu. I think they call it gun fu, but
you're right. Yeah.
Right. I think of that, and I'm like, but wasn't there a film called Equilibrium with?
That's right. By Kurt Wimmer.
Yeah, and our friend Bruce
Christian
Wayne.
Bale.
There we go, Christian Bale. And you just like, no man, like they hit the tone so well that it was impossible that this was not going to be successful. And it's just kind of like, this is part of cinema as well, where it's kind of like, and I remember feeling when I discovered this story, just remembering like, oh, actually, the DVD was kind of floating around in South Africa before it was released in cinemas in South Africa, where it's kind of like, oh, this is kind of like that word of mouth, cult-like followings that films get, because it was just kind of like, what a surprise, what a wonderful surprise. And you're just like, no, I'm really glad this happened. And then you pay attention to how it happened, just in terms of, no, they put in work. I remember watching a behind the scenes where the directors are talking about, I think it's Chad and what's the other guy's name?
It's Chad Talski and David Leitch.
Yes. And they're talking about how basically Keanu got the script, and after he read the script, he presented it to them. He was like, yo, this is for you guys. And they read it and they were like, yo, this is amazing. This is how I interpret it in my mind. This is amazing.
Yeah.
And in their minds, they still felt like, would he be interested in this? Like, would Keanu be interested in this film? And obviously, he's like, yo, guys, I'm in it. I'm there for you. And there were certain things in the behind the scenes that I watched where I was just like, this Keanu guy is, he's exceptional at what he does. But it's also kind of like, in terms of cinema, we still have those wonderful little surprises that show up, right? If you pay attention, or if you're just going through like bargain bins, or you're looking for a film that you've never watched before and you happen to see it and you're like, if I don't watch it now, I'm going to watch it. Then I'm never going to watch it then. You grab it. And it's this weird kind of, it's like another rule, like an unspoken rule of like, no, we still have it good in terms of cinema. Because, certain things still seep through the cracks. And you just, when they, you sneak through those cracks and you pay attention to them and they become something so wonderful, it's like, wow, this is why I love this stuff.
Here's my thing with John Wick, right? I utterly adore John Wick. I think that it is such phenomenal action cinema. And as you say, it was actually designed to be kind of like a B-movie action film, right? And it was Keanu's intervention that changes its destiny.
Interesting.
Because Keanu brings it to those directors. He believes in the sort of 87-11 ethos, coming from his Matrix days. He's been training in judo all this time. And what's fascinating about it is that it's kind of like this, I want to call it like an orgy of coincidence, right? Because it's Chad Stahelski that says, look, I'm a first-time director, right? It was his first time directing. He had done a lot of second unit type of stuff, but this was his kind of debut directorial debut. It was his directorial debut.
Directorial debut.
And and he was he said that, look, I don't want to have to try and hide things with cuts, simply because I'm not that good of a filmmaker to kind of do all this magic. But the one thing that I know that I'm good at, because he was a stuntman before, so was David Leitch. In actual fact, he was the stuntman for Brandon Lee in The Crow. And he was the guy that they could finish the film with after Brandon Lee passed away. There's a great podcast by Scott Adkins where he talks to Chad Stahelski.
Scott Adkins!
Yes, and they go through The Crow, and he shows him certain scenes, and he says to them, "Is this you or is this Brandon?" And he's such a gentleman, and he's like, all I'll say is that Brandon was dead at that time that we shot that scene. And you'll be blown away, because this is a film from like 1994. You know, they use kind of digital effects to kind of move it along, but Chad Stahelski really was Keanu Reeves' stunt double in the Matrix, right? And I remember the first time I ever saw it was on the behind-the-scenes featurette on The Matrix Reloaded, where literally Keanu Reeves is fighting Agent Smith, Hugo Weaving, right? And they're telling him, well, look, you need to get your leg up that high. And I think Chad walks in and kind of does it, and Keanu looks at him and goes, "That's incredible. You know, you're breathtaking." He didn't say that, but
yeah.
But I love the fact that, you know, Chad then working with James McTeague on like V for Vendetta and like Speed Racer and all of these things. There's a genesis that happens from The Matrix to John Wick, right? And what he learns by working with Wu Peng, right, who's like the fight choreographer for The Matrix, etc., is that in order to make good action cinema, you must start with the actor first. And so what he does is that he's like, I'm just going to film this on like sticks or dollies. I'm either going to dolly like left or dolly right. I'm not going to like get around the action and do like Jason Bourne type shaky cam, Paul Greengrass type of things.
Yeah.
I'm just going to make Keanu the best thing in the frame. And changes action cinema. Like changes Western action cinema to the point that you've got thousands of copycats like that now. Right?
Yeah.
But here's my problem with John Wick, right? Because by the time that I got to 4, like, I watched 3 and I started to feel like the film was desensitizing me to the stakes as it was trying to create the stakes, right? Although I feel like it's a technically beautifully executed movie, and I'm not slinging mud at the movie whatsoever. I'm just talking about my own personal feelings in watching it, because they're not bad films.
No, I like that. I like personal feelings.
So 3 and 4 are not bad films, but however, my opinions of them are as such, and this is really what I want to speak about, right? Because when I went to watch 3, I started to feel that narrative dissonance that you get from playing a video game that doesn't kind of congeal it too well. Where I started to think like, but hold on a second, like the people around kind of feel like NPCs a lot of the times.
Yes.
Around the action. Because I started to think, but why aren't people reacting to these people like shooting at one another? Because if you notice this in the John Wick series, you'll actually see it, and it's quite apparent in the club sequence in John Wick 4, when again, Scott Adkins is going up against Keanu Reeves, and like no one is paying any attention to them like beating the shit out of each other.
Yeah.
Which is like, you brought this up with the Dark Knight thing. In the Dark Knight, it's filmed within the confines of like in the VIP area, so there are ways to kind of get around it, and it's a very short scene. But that scene in John Wick 4 goes on for like very long, right?
Way too long.
Like Scott, and Scott Adkins he's just fucking eating the scenery. He's the best thing about the whole sequence.
Yeah.
Like him in a fat suit is just sublime.
He's doing some Nicolas Cage stuff. He's just like, let me eat this up.
It's so good. It's so good. But the thing that started to bother me was kind of like when they introduced like the plot armor of like the bulletproof suits, to the point that everybody's running around kind of holding the lapels. And I started to look at it from a point where I started to be ejected from the cinema. And look, I'm a big fan of Chad, I'm a big fan of Keanu, I'm a big fan of the film franchise, and I think that, like for me, one of my favorites is John Wick 2. I think the mythology, I think everything is it's just so good. And I think that probably because I had such high expectations that perhaps it didn't meet my extremely high expectations, that I have this opinion.
No.
But
I okay, continue.
Yeah. So, no, I think go for it, because what I'm going to say next might lead us into a different type of conversation. So I really want to get what you want to say.
No, yeah. I want to put on my advocate coat again. Coat,
Here we go.
not blazer, but the point is,
Make me feel good, Charles, is what I'm saying. I'm hurting. Make my boo-boos go away.
This is like one of my favorite things about the franchise, the John Wick franchise, right? Because I'm like, why is it called a John Wick franchise? Like, it's John Wick, it's the first film, right? And then we happen to get a second film, and then now it's a franchise, right? So you go back to the first one, where that story is just very contained, simple, easy. You know, in your mind, you're like, oh yeah, man, why didn't anybody think about making this type of film, right? And you know, there's certain scenes in that film where you're just kind of like, actually, this is one of my favorite scenes. I'm not gonna say why, but this is one of my favorite scenes. And you know, I always enjoy a film after, like, my siblings and I can just have like a little, you know, like conversation, and we use film references in it, you know. So it's kind of like when the cop shows up at John Wick's house in the first one, and John's like, noise complaint.
Oh,
right. And you just kind of like, you know what, I'm home. This is good. Whatever's happening here, this is good, right? Fast forward to John Wick 2, and you talk about club scenes. I'm sorry, not John Wick 2. Sorry, fast forward to later on in John Wick 1, where what's that wrestler's name? Dang nabbit, forgive me for.
Oh, I think I know who you're talking about. He plays the bouncer, right?
He plays the bouncer, and it's just that scene. It's just, you know, Mr. Weak. Why don't you take the night off? Thank you, Mr. Weak.
Yeah.
And you're just like, what just happened? Right?
Yeah.
That scene was just, for me, it was like, what just happened? Because what comes after that is obviously the stuff that happens in the club. When I say in the club, you're looking at John chasing down the son through the club, right? And you're like, yo, this guy's running through the club, and nobody's trying to help him. But it's part of the environment, right? And you know, his mythology in terms of John Wick is like. Nobody knows John Wick because he's been retired for so long, etc., blah blah blah, and the guy gets away, but it's still quite fantastic to me. Where it's just like, what just happened? And this goes back to that scene, whatever the case is, with the bouncer, and I'm like, this is fantastic. And then you fast forward to John Wick 2, where like you, I'm kind of apprehensive in terms of why is there a John Wick 2? Right? That first one was just wonderful.
It's, you know what it is? It's just a gourmet meal. You know, where you don't need seconds, nor do you need anything else. All you need is, you need to like have a black cup of coffee and a cigarette and just sit back and just percolate on what you just watched.
Yeah, the first one was just so kind of poetic. It was you know, just in terms of like the internal story for the character, like it was very heartwarming. It was very moving, in my opinion, right? And it's very simple because it's kind of like, you know, here's this guy who's lived his life in a certain way, right? And now he's enjoying certain things in his life, right? Yeah. And then there's this, you know, this thing that shows up outside of his personal drama thing that happened with his, you know, his wife, and then the dog, and then obviously Theon Greyjoy shows up All right.
Thank you for that. I'm looking for a way to utilize that particular reference.
Because I'm kind of like, no. How is this guy the perfect, guy for this role in that situation? And you're just kind of like, all right, cool. So John Wick happens, and you feel cathartic as well. You're like, yo, man,
Oh my goodness, it's so good.
This is brilliant, and I still love that Swedish actor. He's since passed on. That guy's performance was amazing, and you're just like, John Wick is brilliant, right? It's up there in the 9s. If you're rating films out of 10,
oh yeah,
like it's up there in the 9s, like, right? So I'm like, John Wick 2.
It's high up on the shelf.
Yeah. And now John Wick 2, I'm like, look, there's no reason for this. Let me go check it out. And luckily, I was pleasantly surprised by certain aspects of the film. I was like, yo, actually, you guys made a decision to make another one. I understand completely why, because there's no ways you don't get this opportunity after the first one was so good. And they really kind of came through, like, just in terms of like, here's a challenge, go for it again. And they did. And I was like, you know what, actually, you guys might have done maybe a too good of a job when it comes to number 2, because now if I put on my numbers brain, I'm like, how do you not get somebody to throw a ton of money at you to make another one? And I kind of feel like this is part of Keanu's resume now, where it's like, yo, man, you're very good at what you do, and it kind of spins off into other things. But John Wick was another one. I was like, I really did not expect a second John Wick. And then we got one, and I was like, oh, that's fantastic. So now number 3 and number 4, I'm a loyalist, like I'm loyal in general, so I'm gonna watch them.
Yeah.
And I've already reserved my opinion to the fact that they did not need a number 2, but we got a number 2. So now what do we do? And it became this it became kind of like a playground for like, yo guys, I just made like this really, really good film, and you guys want to be a part of it? No, even better. Right? Even better. Hey man, about to jump into the spaceship. Wanna come? Right?
I don't think so.
And for me,
what you're saying now, so it's a sandbox, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and what that sandbox did was allow a lot of the people from like the stunts and action and everybody who's been involved in cinema at that level and at those type of films was allowed to show up in those other films. So
gotcha.
I was like, I don't expect these last 2 films to be good, right? I'm gonna watch them, and I watched them, and some things were good, right? Obviously, thankfully. And specifically in number 4, I was like, look, I am trudging through this right now. I know that you guys have some sort of obligation to make this other one, and I don't know how. So now I'm curious, and you got me involved, so great. And then you watch it, and you're like, yeah, I was kind of right. And then they still surprise me with like 1 or 2 scenes where I'm just like, damn, never. All right, cool. This is why I like John Wick, and it's not necessarily based on why is it a good film or why is it a good franchise. It was just kind of like, there's a story here that I have with John Wick from that first one, just in terms of, hey, I saw the trailer. What's it doing in the bargain bin, eh? Let me see. Let's give it here. So you get that one. And then fast forward, several years later, and you're kind of like, John Wick, how did you get here? This is fantastic. And
how did you graduate? How did you graduate so high above sort of the standings of what we consider to be cinema, because really it was like such a curveball that just redefined what action cinema looks like. And my favorite thing in John Wick 2 is the opening where they projecting Buster Keaton on the building, and then like Keanu Reeves comes tearing around the corner in a car. And I'm just like, yes.
Did you see the essay on that?
No, I did not. Please share.
I'm going to send that video essay to you ASAP, my friend. It's
absolutely
full of
glorious. Thank you so much. So here's my thing, right? So you've redefined it for me. Thank you. You've given me such a new perspective, and this is what I love about our conversations. You've given me such a new perspective on 3 and 4, because if you look at it as a sandbox for all these stunt guys to play, because I love every single person in there. Like when Daniel Bernard shows up in the first one, I'm like, oh, I know you, I love you. And I fell in love with Daniel Bernard, not just from like the second Bloodsport, but he played a character named Zero in Mortal Kombat Conquest, which was the Mortal Kombat series that was on ETV at 8 o'clock on a Sunday. And he was also just eating up, sort of the scenes that he was in. The series as a whole wasn't great, although it has one of the most like hardcore heavy metal last episodes in any television series ever, where they don't care about the audience whatsoever. They're like, oh, you like what we did? How about F you and F everybody that you care about? Because they literally, that traumatized me for so long, because you have all this investment, I think, for like 3 seasons, and then they got cancelled midway through their plans, and they were like, well, let's just set the whole thing on fire, along with the young people that are watching this, but I digress. Daniel Bernard in there is amazing. In number 4, Marco Zaror is like one of my favorites, because when he shows up in the Undisputed series with Scott Adkins, and he plays this, sort of this Latino, Colombian-esque, villain. He's so good in there. I still quote him still till today, where he's like a drug addict, but he calls his drugs chocolate, and he says to Scott Adkins in one of the lines, he's just like, I'm going to really enjoy like fighting against you, but first I must have my chocolate. And then he shoots himself up, and it's just okay. So when I look at it like that, so I need to use the same rubric that I applied to the Undisputed series, that I applied to John Wick.
Oh man,
the same rubric that I utilize when I watch my favorite B movies and apply. It's what it is. It's the level of perfection and quality that they have mastered that fools me.
And man, like,
and I use a different part of my brain.
Because you mentioned you mentioned Daniel, and I'm like, where's Mark?
Mark Dacascos.
Donnie Yen.
You know when he like Donnie Yen.
It's just like.
But this is the thing.
This is the thing. Yeah.
This is the thing. Because like when Donnie Yen shows up in Blade 2, like I was just like, yes, slow down, baby. You know what I'm saying? And I had the same feeling when he showed up in John Wick 4. And when Mark Dacascos shows up in number 3, I'm just like, no, they're just playing with my feelings. They're just playing loose and fast with all of my like video store karate section. If Don the Dragon Wilson shows up in John Wick 5, I'm good. But here's the thing. In John Wick 4, there is a sequence, Charles, which I need to speak to you about, because although I came from a very sort of Oliver Stone-esque perspective on 3 and 4, where Oliver Stone said, look, John Wick 4 is pretty much a video game.
Okay.
He's like,
I think we're talking about the same scene.
And that was his critique. Yeah, that was his critique of it, because he's mowing through all these people as he's making his way up.
Yes.
And I can see it, because that third act is kind of like, elevator action where you're going up the stairs, right?
Yes.
I get it. And I remember thinking it when I watched it, but that is not to say that I'm taking some sort of snobbish look at it, because I still was there, man. I still loved all the characters, everything about it.
Okay, but please clarify that scene so that I can wax lyrical.
Okay, cool. So that particular scene where he's going up the stairs, right?
Yeah.
Where basically he's fighting all these people and they kind of knock him all the way down again. It felt very much like an RPG type of sequence. But there's another scene that I need to speak to you about, and that's the top-down scene with the exploding shotgun rounds.
Thank you. Because I'm like,
oh my God.
I thought I was going crazy, right? So this is the nice thing about kind of like, paying attention to all the things that you love, all this time, where you kind of like, you recognize, cue Leo meme. Hey, shh, 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 right? I need to learn how to whistle. But
it's okay. It's okay. You don't have to.
Right? And you kind of like, I remember, just like you, I'm like, okay, this thing is just, it's maybe a little bit too long. And it's kind of like stairs, and then he gets knocked back down all the way to the beginning. And I'm just kind of like, all right, how's this going to end? But I'm still involved. I'm still a sucker for the stuff, right? I'm still a sucker for it. I'm like, okay, how are you going to solve the question that I just asked? Cool, whatever the case is. However, after the film, right, when I think about things that stand out to me, and bless the internet for agreeing with everybody else who agrees with this. I was like, where is this from? This is amazing. And lo and behold, because I have played said game.
Tell me all about it, sir. This is what I was looking for.
This is said game. I'm just like, no, man. Is this Miami Hotline? Hotline Miami.
Yeah. I hear you.
I'm like, wait. No, it can't be. No, it definitely is. And I'm quiet when I'm watching it. I'm like, I'm quiet. And then you finish the film, and I'm like, I need to talk to somebody about this. I didn't have anybody around me at the time who was like, yo, do you know John McFall? I'm like, yeah, I know John McFall. I'm a fan. However, when they, relate to the scene specifically, where it's like, oh my goodness, they did it so well, right? Just in terms of surprise, whether you play games or not, whether you enjoy action films or not, like, because I kind of think of like, how does somebody else who's not aware of the the creative influences for the specific scene, how do they respond to this? And my mind just goes, you know what, they will love it, because it was gorgeous. It still is gorgeous. Like, whoever's idea that was.
I was having like a transcendent experience. I was like, hold on a second, because so I haven't played Hotline Miami, right? And apparently it was also influenced by another game called the Hong Kong Massacre, right? So it was those two games that kind of reference it. I just sent you a trailer for Hong Kong Massacre, right?
Got it.
Because I researched it, because I also needed to know. Because when I was watching it, I was like, hold on a second. I feel like I've seen this scene before, but I hadn't. Because what it was is, for me at least, a person who had not seen Hotline Miami and had not knew about Hong Kong Massacre, I looked at it and my brain went like the first two GTAs, but then it was like, no, it's like some sort of alchemy of that plus Max Payne plus all of these other things. And my brain was like firing, just trying to figure out where I'd seen it before. And then my brain just kind of settled and went, you haven't seen it before. You actually haven't seen this before. Like, when you see an imitation of like The Matrix, like whether it's Bulletproof Monk or whatever, you're like, I've seen this before.
Yeah.
But I'll take it because it's you know, it's like it's like you know, if there's like a big movie like Armageddon coming out, there's always a movie that's, you know, some sort of B grade version of that movie that kind of comes out as well on like direct to DVD, where they try to like, you know, ride the hype. Like if Aliens is coming out, like Alien Beast is also coming out, and you're like, I'm cool. I know what I signed up for. But that particular scene, I was like, this is the first of its kind. You know what I'm saying? Like within my experience of action cinema, like it felt like
this is wonderful because as well, you know, we've been trying to talk about like segue into like cinematic storytelling in games, etc., or at least the art of cinematic storytelling in games. And it eventually would lead us down this path of like video game adaptations, right? And why video game adaptations are so good now. I mean, not all of them are good, you know, in my opinion, you know. So it's like, but then it's not just necessarily the whole adaptation or the whole film or series. It's also scenes that, you know, inform that or that speak to that. And this one in John Wick 4, because I never had the thought of like, okay, Hotline Miami, I played it. It's very high octane, very fast action, very blah blah blah. But it took me back to my you know, Windows 95 days. You know, can I play Grand Theft Auto 1 without you know parental finding out? Floppy disk, you know, like I have to take the floppy disk out of the computer so that there's no evidence, because you would play it off the floppy disk. Oh man, craziness. And this top-down perspective, now that you kind of clarified it for me, just in terms of like, oh man, GTA also did this, was like how you were like, I've never experienced this before. I was like, I know exactly where this is from. Am I going crazy? I was not going crazy, because, you know, it's live action as well, because now you're paying attention to the setups. Like, how did they actually set this up, and then the choreography, and then in terms of the action itself and how it pertains to the story and the character, like, so you've got homework. Hotline Miami, just the first one, play the first levels, you'll know what's going. I was going to ask you, how did it feel the first time you experienced a cinematic, you know, experience in a video game where you kind of like, wait, I'm not sure what's going on here, but I love it. But I wanted to ask, like, when was the last time you felt like that? When, you know, a certain game and cinema aspects kind of like, it took you away. Second part of that question is, what are you looking forward to in terms of that experience? Because I always look forward to that type of experience. Like, what is the next best thing?
In the words of Solid Snake, if we make it through this, I'll tell you.